Okay, coders, we're going to jump right into this on learning TypeScript using Next.js. Now, I created a folder called Next.js TypeScript tutorial, and then I'm going to initiate the project npx create next app period. And right here, I'm going to use TypeScript, yes. Now, I'm doing this initial setup because I want to teach you how to learn TypeScript the way that I would want to learn it and the way that it makes sense to me. So when I first was learning TypeScript, I was confused on the extensions, TSX and TS. And then you notice that with a regular Next.js project, it has, this would be called like this, JS, right? There would be JavaScript files, but this is now TS for TypeScript. And so I was confused on this, like, why is this called TSX? When do I use TSX versus using TS? So you notice that for TSX, you use this when there is HTML in here. So that's why we call it TSX. So whenever you're returning HTML content in here, name your file as TSX. And a lot of times we'll have a folder in here, components like this. And then we will create some server actions, right? I'm going to create a file here called server actions that we're going to use. And I'm going to call this TS. Because in here, I'm only going to have functions that's returning like the data. So there's no output of HTML content here. Let me minimize this so you can see. So right now for this page right here, I'm going to remove all of this. I'm going to do my little pre-setup so that I can teach you. I'm creating a nice formatted page here with some Tailwind CSS. That's all I'm doing. And we're going to use this server action in a minute. I'll close it. We don't need the image up here. So what I'm going to do is create a regular function up here that we all know, fetch Pokemon equals async. All right, we're going to do a fetch Pokemon, and I'm going to do a fetch on it const results equals await fetch. And so what I'm going to fetch is, let's go here. So there's a Pokemon API right here called pokeapi.co. And it returns data for you. For this guy built a API that returns Pokemon data. So it returns this Pokemon data with an array of 10 items, and inside the array has objects of Pokemons. And the object just has a name and a URL on top of other data, the count, next page, previous page. So the results is what we need. The results is the array of all the Pokemon. So I'm going to take this fetch URL. Going to put into my fetch right here. So we're fetching Pokemon, simple function. If the results are not okay, we're going to throw an error, new error. Otherwise, let's return the data, await results.json. So very simple function to return Pokemon data. And like I said, this is going to return an array of results equals an array that has an object of name, you know, like Bulbasaur, URL. So right now I'm creating this inside this page, but I'm going to move this to the component later on so that it can be clean. But for this example, I'm just trying to show you on one page so that you can see it better and it makes sense. Okay, so let's go right here. We are going to say const Pokemon equals await fetch Pokemons, right? We're going to fetch this function now. We're going to call the function, put it in here. To use an await on this home function, this needs to be an async function. And then last, I need to return the data. So return data dot results. So this is a regular function that we would just then map through, right? So we would say Pokemons dot map item and index. Return list of this with the key in here, index, because we need a key. And then I'll just make it very simple by saying item.name and item.url. Last thing, we close that up. And so, yeah, this is a regular way of calling this function that we know about without TypeScript. So with TypeScript, you'll see that I'm getting some errors in here. It doesn't know what these are. It doesn't know what we're mapping through here. Because with TypeScript, anytime you're calling a function, and if you're passing in a parameter, or if you're returning data, it needs to know those types. And so right here with TypeScript, we have to say promise. And then we're promising data that we're returning here. I'm returning the results. Remember, this is an array of objects. And the array of objects looks like this. It's an array with 2 object items in here. So let's recreate this array here with objects. We're telling it, I'm going to promise that I'm returning an array with this object with a name that is a string, because this right here is a string. And then I'm also going to return another item called URL that is also a string. You see that? So it's an array with this object with 2 items in here, name, URL, and they are both strings. So I'm giving a type to this as I return it. And this is how we return it. We have to say promise. Now you'll see that the errors went away. It now knows what this item is. If I hover over the item, it tells me right here, yes, this item has 2 things in it. It has an object of name and URL that are both strings. So go ahead and use those. Also, if I hover over Pokemons, it tells me the same thing. This Pokemon right here, this variable right here, Pokemons, that's right. You returned this whole array of objects right here for me. And so now I know what it is. It's an array of objects with name and URL. So yeah, this is how you create this function. But remember, when I said it also needs to type if we're passing in parameters. All right, so now we're going to take this a little bit further because, like I said, with TypeScript, when we pass in parameters, we also have to tell it a type. So I'm going to set up some parameters here. I'm going to say const offset equals 0 and const limit equals 10. Because you'll realize right here with our fetch, it has an offset and a limit. So I want to pass in my own offset and limit. So offset, limit. I'm passing in these 2 right here, in here. So now let's give this right here an offset and a limit. But we need to tell it what it is, right? Remember, this thing needs to know what the type is. So you can just put colon number. This is the most basic way, colon number. And I'm going to show you in a more advanced way in a minute. But let me just do this, and then we're going to convert this string so that we can call these parameters in here offset limit. You see that? Now we pass this through, and look, no errors. This now works with TypeScript. If I change this to a string, you got to tell it this is now a string. Okay, that's how it works. Very simple. Okay, so now the next thing I want to cover, because this was confusing for me for a little bit, is type versus interface. What are these? So I'm going to start off by making an interface right here, and I'm going to call that Pokemon. So yeah, I want the interface to be of this object, name and URL of string, right? And I'm going to say name, string, URL, string. So now we can use this Pokemon in place of this right here. So I'm going to remove this whole thing with the array, right? I'm going to remove this, and now I can call Pokemon. Because now I'm telling it return this object right here, but we also notice that this is an object of an array. See, it's giving us an error still. So we're telling this is an array of objects. You see how I just replaced that to tell it use this interface. And you'll see we have no errors here. And let's do the same thing with this right here. Let's call that interface Pokemon options, which has an offset, which is a number, and limit, which is a number. Here's the thing. When we're passing through parameters, we can remove the type on that, and then I have to wrap this in an object like that, right? I have to wrap these together, and then I put the colon and tell it this is the interface of Pokemon options. So it's basically saying the same thing like this. If I remove this, it's really offset number, limit number. You see that? Set this offset as a number. Set this limit right here, this limit. We're associating the types to it. We can take this out and just put Pokemon options. And then it just associates it with this interface. And everything works the same way. So if I save this, go to the page, refresh, see, it works. No errors. Everything works fine. But why am I using interface? Can I use type? Yeah, you can say type too. Type Pokemon equals is different. And then same thing here, type Pokemon options equal. So when you're doing this type, scroll down here and you'll see it's giving us an error in this. We have to wrap this inside like that to tell it offset limit using these types right here. Save that. If we refresh, so everything works. So yeah, what's the difference between interface and types? Well, here, let me put this as an interface, Pokemon interface. So with types, I can do this. Type custom Pokemon equals Pokemon and Pokemon options. And so this now combines these two, meaning that this custom Pokemon, it now looks like this. It has both these inside. See, like it just joins it together. But you can't do that with an interface. So I believe that's the only difference. At first I was using types a lot. I was just calling these types. But I did notice that a lot of people were just using interface when you want to declare the type and you're not really making any changes in here. It's just whatever type it is, that's what it is. And then if you want to add on to it later on, you can just make a type out of it. Yeah, I suggest using interface, and then you can create your own type later on and you can join them together and make them bigger. But realize this as you're creating your projects, use the same. If you're doing interface, do interface. Don't mix and match. Don't do interface and then all of a sudden switch to type. Just make them all interface and then add on types as you need them. All right, now I'm going to make this a little bit more advanced by returning more in here. So if you remember our results here, it returned a lot of things. And right now I'm only telling it to return the result data. But if you remember, this thing has like count, next, it has previous. So it has all of these in here, right? I want to include it with the results now. So instead of returning just the results, I want to return the full data. And to do that, I can no longer return just the results data, which is this array of objects, right? I can no longer return this. I have to do a new property here. So I'm going to make a new interface here called Pokemon props. And you'll see a lot of people calling things props. As you're creating types for a lot of these, they'll call like this, they'll probably even call it Pokemon option props or something. And now I'm going to include the count, which is a number. Next is a string, or it can be null. Previous can be a string or null. Why am I saying string or null? Well, let's go to our return data here from the pokeapi.co. Next here is returning a URL, which is a string, but that can also be null. Same thing with previous. This is a string, but it can also be null. So if I change this to 0 here, you'll see that previous is null here. So that's why I'm telling it could be a string or null. The results is an array of this Pokemon right here, array of these objects. So I can tell it now Pokemon array. So yeah, now we can use this Pokemon props right here, copy it, put it in here, and that's what we're returning. The whole data. And down here, so now Pokemons, we want to call Pokemons dot results because we're mapping through only the result. I can't map through the count, so it's going to give me an error. I can't map through the next. I'm mapping through the results. See how that works? In order to save that, go here, refresh. See, everything works fine. So yeah, practice with this for a while to get used to how to create these types. Now let's take this one step further by adding our own custom properties in here, right? Let's say I want to add an error in here. And I know the error, I'm going to use a string. And even a status. And the status would be a number. When we scroll down here and we're returning this data only holds the Pokemon data. But I want to add to my error and my status. So we could just do a custom props or something like this. And then we just list out the same thing again. We say count is data.count, next data.next, previous data.previous, results data.results error. This is my custom error message. And then status, let's give it a status of 200. So now I just created my own right here where I can just now return this custom props. See, and then when we're returning it, it's returning this Pokemon props, which has all of this already. It has our types. So now that I'm returning that, I can now call my error and status if I want. So right down here, let's just say Pokemons.error. And this should now display, this is my custom error message. Let's save that, go here, refresh, and you'll see right here, this is my custom error message. See that? So yeah, it's going to take a lot of practice by typing this out and doing it yourself. Like, do it a lot, because you're gonna think like, oh, I understand this now, but you're gonna run into errors because of this part right here. A lot of times I would not include these brackets, and then I would get errors, and then I didn't understand that over here, right here, you have to say offset number, limit number. You have to call these names again, because at first when I was doing this, I was leaving this out, assuming that it would know. I thought it would just know that, oh, this offset is this right here, this limit is this right here, but I kept on getting errors and I didn't understand that. And so just remember how to type this in correctly. When they are parameters that you're inputting, you have to tell it. And it's confusing because if I were to do it this way, offset number, limit number, you see that? Like, it's fine. So yeah, understand parameters, how you're passing them through, because otherwise you'll get errors. Okay, let's clean all this up before I move on to the next stage, because I'm going to create a folder in here called models, and inside of models I will have a Pokemon.ts TypeScript file, because I'm going to put these interfaces in here. Cut all that out, paste it in here, and then we need to export this, right? Now we can import the Pokemon options, Pokemon props there, but I also want to put this inside my server action. So I'm going to cut all of this out, go back to my components, server actions here, paste this in, and I'm going to export that. So I need to import these here instead of on the original page. So let's just take all this out, import it here. Here we go, import Pokemon options, Pokemon props. Now let's go back to the page and import fetch Pokemon from server actions. Now it's a lot cleaner. We have our components here where we're calling the function, and then we have our interface here inside of our models. So now I can reference this on multiple pages, because the next thing I'm going to do is create an API. So let's go up here to app. I'm going to create an API. And inside the API, I'll have Pokemon. Inside of Pokemon, I have a route.ts file, right? Remember, TS for all of our functions, TSX for anything we're returning HTML content. Let's do an export async function get. And this get, I'm going to have a request which uses next request. So next request. There we go. It imported next request from next server for me. So to make it simple here, I just typed in my code, which does the same thing. It's fetching from the Poke API here, but we're using our own API on our own server to run this fetch for it. And then it's going to return this, and we can call this API on our own server. Imagine if you were to call your database process in this API, and then the database returns data for you, right? I'm just doing it this way so that it's simple to give you an example. And we also need next response. Let's import that next response. So when you're creating an API route in here on your own server, you can just return whatever this get is. You can return the data as a next response here. I didn't have to do a promise here. Although I can type it out and say promise next response like that. I can tell it like I'm promising to return this. And to take it further, I can also give this the Pokemon props. I can do that as well, but you don't need to. You can remove this, take that out. You can just return this data, but in the page here, You see how I have this function get Pokemon. I'm creating a function to get it. I'm fetching it. I'm returning the result. Now this right here, I have to tell it what type it is. So let's import Pokemon props there. And I have to tell this, like, what is this is returning? Well, that is a Pokemon props. So now that I'm telling it that, it knows that there is a result in here that I can map through. And then if we go to the page here, see, everything works. Here's the error message. So I just wanted to show you that on creating APIs. The API, just return the data, whatever data you're doing, where you're returning the result in your page, you have to tell it what it is. All right, so let's move on to components and passing it through components. So I'm going to convert this to a component, but first let's put this back to the original so that you don't get confused. We're going to use our fetch Pokemon here to make it simple. And now inside of components here, I'm going to create a file called Pokemon list.tsx. Now we're creating a tsx file. And inside of that tsx file, I'm going to put all of this here with the error and mapping through the Pokemon list, right? So I'm going to cut that out, go in here, export default function Pokemon list, return. So now we want to pass the parameters through this component so that we can map through the Pokemon, right? We want to pass it from this page here. We fetched it from this page, and then we want to pass it through the component on this page. Because this component page is now a client page, I'm going to use client on this. So let's import Pokemon list so that we can import it here. Pokemon list. And I want to pass Pokemons equals Pokemons. So I want to pass this in here. And I want to keep the same name called Pokemons. I can call this something else, then I just have to reference that name in here. So let's call it Pokemons, right? But it doesn't know what this type is, remember, so we have to import that. Import Pokemon props. And then we're going to tell it Pokemons right here is a Pokemon props. That's how we pass it through. Save that, go back here, save this. And yeah, that's how we pass through components. So go back here, refresh, everything works fine. All right, so the final thing I want to show here is the useState. useState, we can't use it inside of a server page. This is a server page right here, remember? So for the useState, I'm going to go to my Pokemon list.tsx page, which is a use client page. And let's import useState. And then inside the function here, I'll say const Pokédex set Pokédex equals useState. I want to display the Pokemon name here, so we need to import Pokemon. Because remember, here, I'm importing this right here, the interface Pokemon with name and URL. So I'm using that for the useState. And to use that, I can say object here as Pokemon. I want this Pokédex constant variable right here to be this Pokemon interface. You see, it's declared as that Pokemon. Because up here, I'm going to say the name of the Pokédex. Pokédex.name. Okay, right there, see, no errors. It knows what it is, it's from Pokemon. Because what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to have this select option right here. Okay, so I have this select with these options. I can change it to Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Charizard. And let's remove this for now. I'll show you this in a minute. Here is our select box. Save that. You see right here, that's how it looks like. Here, let me format this a little bit better. And so inside here, when I select it, I'm going to say on change, handle this change value. So I need to create this handle change function here that I'm calling. So const handle change equals. and it takes in a target value, which is one of these values here. So the val is a string, remember, that's the type. And then I could just say set Pokédex right here to the name of that value, name, and URL. Let's just keep it empty for now. I just want the name. I want to change around the name when I click that. Save that. Let's go back here. See, Bulbasaur, Charizard, Pikachu. It changes it. So why am I showing you this? Well, what if I want to put this into a component here? Okay, let's do a component here. Select Pokemon.tsx. Export default function, select Pokemon, return. And so I want to put this whole thing in here. Let's cut that out, go here, paste it in. And so we want to now import the select Pokemon here, right there, put it right here, right? Select Pokemon. So what I'm trying to do is from this component, see, it's in a component. I want to handle that on change. When I'm clicking this on change here in this component, I want to pass it right back out to the parent so that it can call it in the parent and do things. Because a lot of the times in projects that you're doing, you will have this. And at first I was confused on how do I call the function out in the parent if I have it inside of a component, and to do that with TypeScript. So I want to pass this on change now into select Pokemon. Handle change equals handle change. And I'm calling this so that it's just easy for you to learn right now. You can call this whatever. And this on change is this function right here. It's allowing it to use that function. Okay, remember that. So now this on change, I'm passing it into this component. I need to tell it now, handle change. See, handle change. This right here, handle change. It's this right here, handle change. And what is this handle change? Well, I'm going to give it now a select props and create a type up here so that I can pass that right back out. This is a little bit confusing, but you'll see in a minute here. I'm going to give it a type, select props equals. Now inside this type here, you see how it looks just like a regular TypeScript here, right? We're telling it, what is this that we're passing in? What kind of type is this? Well, it's a handle change function that has a value of a string and it's void. It's now a function. So you see that? We passed, let's go back to the beginning here. This is a component that I'm passing through with my own parameter here called handle change. That's accessing this handle change out here. Let's do this, handle on change, all right? So you can tell the difference. You see that? Handle on change is calling that. Now this has access to that. And this function takes in a value of a string and then it just sets the Pokemon name right up here. See, it's just using the useState. And the useState is a Pokemon. This handle change is calling this function handle on change. Now we go back in here. Handle change is a prop that calls handle change. It's a prop that's telling it, hey, this handle change prop here is actually a function that's being called, which is this function here. It's being called. And so this has to match up. Remember how we do our TypeScript. If I were to just copy this, this is the same thing here as saying that. See that? Handle change, these two handle change, it's this function. It's taking that value right here, handle change, it's calling handle change, and give me that value. I'm going to pass it right back out. So that's why I created this select props. And then it handles it, passes it right back out. It's a select box, passing that right back out, passes it to here, and you see there's no errors. Now it will update the name out inside of this parent page for me here of the Pokemon list. This Pokemon list is here inside of this parent page of the server page. So let's see that work. Refresh, select one, Bulbasaur. See, it works. It just passed it right back out. But I wanted you to see the type that we had to declare to get it to work that way. Select Pokemon, handle change, calls this function. Go here, here's the handle change. And that calls that function here. It just passes it right back out. It's the flow of it. A little bit more advanced, a little bit more time to take to understand this. I can also just save this as an interface if you want, instead of the type. It's up to you. It works like that. And that will wrap up this Next.js TypeScript tutorial. I hope it made a lot of sense with all this. And I want to say this was what I was very confused with on learning TypeScript. Like, I wanted to learn all of these right here. This is exactly what I needed because I use this so much. I use state a lot. I import components a lot. I run server actions and I run routes. We all do this on every project. We all have actions, routes, components, use states. And I thought it's a great way to learn TypeScript by learning these main basics of it. So guys, I'm going to put this full code on my Patreon if you'd like to download it, support this channel, and if you can, give this video a like so that it can reach a lot more people on learning TypeScript. If you want to watch a lot of my older tutorial videos, I have all of that. You can download all the code as well. You can also go to my website, kodakai.dev, see all my projects, download them, join my Patreon, support this channel, helps me a lot, and I will try to put out some more tutorial videos like this. Tell me what you would like to see next, because at this point I'm just guessing what you would like to see. And I got a lot of good responses from my previous tutorial videos saying that you love how I teach it. So that's why I decided to do this one, because I feel like TypeScript, it scares a lot of people. That's why they just do the regular JavaScript. But I do notice a lot of companies and every project out there now, it's all in TypeScript. So you got to learn it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one. Kodakai out.